Ladies and gentlemen, as an international master, I don't get to play Grandmasters very often in serious chess games. And what I mean by that is, obviously, I can play them in 1 minute and 3 minute, but in tournaments, in order to play a lot of Grandmasters, you're really going to have to sustain a level. You're going to have to draw or beat them so you can continue getting fed more Grandmasters, because if you lose, you probably won't. Well, yesterday, in Title Tuesday, I was on a good streak, and so I'm going to share with you today 4 games that I played against Grandmasters, very strong players in their own right. And we're going to look at all the games, and we're going to have a great time, and that's the entire purpose of this video. So you will see my ups and my downs, and we're going to kick things off in the third round of Title Tuesday. I have 2 out of 2, and I get paired against MSB2. And MSB2 is Matthias Blubaum. Hopefully I'm pronouncing that correctly. Germans, correct me if I'm wrong. And, you know, here we go. This is a 3-minute game, and every time we make a move, we get a second bonus, and that way you can't just, you know, dirty flag somebody. So I begin the game with c4, and after Matthias plays e6, I decided to go back to d4, kind of expecting a knight f6, d5 setup, and I got both of those moves. And I didn't know what he was going to play. I didn't know if he was going to play a Semitaraj, bishop b7, bishop b4, Rogozin. Of course, Blubaum is on a public account, so he can't really leak, like, massive prep, so he just plays the knight d7 QGD. Now, you might remember that some weeks ago I played against Rabbi Kevlishvili in my tournament in Washington Chess Congress, and it was the exact same opening. Do you not remember that game because you didn't watch my video, because you're not a true supporter? Or did you just forget because chess is a really hard game to remember? Well, in that game I didn't play very accurately, but this time I have since filled in the gaps of my repertoire, and both of us develop our pieces out. We both castle, and this is actually like most of my notes, and I play rook c1. Now there's a lot of setups here, but rook c1, basically black has 3 plans in this position: playing the move c5, playing the move queen to e7 and doing something with the rooks, or playing the move knight to e4. Now knight to e4 looks very confrontational and looks very decent. And I wanted to play this against Blubaum because I wanted to build my experience in these positions. I really don't play these positions a whole lot. I don't get to play them a whole lot, and I'm not so comfortable in them. So I'm like, all right, you know, who better to play against than this guy? Like, you go to the gym, training partner. And, you know, normally what I like to do in these positions is force my opponent to play f5, because there's no point doing this. I mean, I have all this, and that doesn't really make any sense. But when they play f5, you can rotate the knight. This is a very important idea for this position. And what that does is it opens up your bishop to fight for the dark squares. And for example, if the opponent plays something like queen f6, not letting you play this move, there's this nice move c5. Nice little tactic here. If takes, takes, and c6 is coming, and the queen is hanging, and everything is being lost. So, that's 92 is a very nice idea, and like, for example, you know, you play like this, and you basically block up the dark squares. But I decided to play cd5, and I decided to transform the position in this fashion, without my light squared bishop. And my logic was, okay, I'm going to put my knight on c4, and take this, and we're both going to be left with bishops on b2 and b7, which we might not be completely thrilled about. Now, it turns out this transformation of the position is slightly inaccurate. At the time of the blitz game, I didn't know that, and I just kind of went ahead with my plan. I got to this position. And now my game plan was going to be move my queen out here, rotate my knight to the f4 square, because my knight is not really doing a whole lot, and once my knight gets to the f4 square, I can play d5. And once I play d5, my dark squared bishop opens up, and I was like, all right, fantastic, everything's going according to plan. Now, I didn't know if I should play queen h5 or knight e2 first. I decided to begin with knight e2. And here I actually thought he might have made a slight inaccuracy, because I can attack his rook. And normally I thought the rook was going to be rotating to these 2 files, but it didn't. It just went back. And it seemed like I accomplished kind of everything I wanted. And then, like, I just took a look at the position and was like, wait a minute. I thought I got everything I wanted, and yet I'm still unhappy. And that's sort of sometimes the case when you play GMs. You know, you make a silent mention to them of your plan. That's the way chess works. With your moves, you're silently telling them what your plan is. They look at your silent plan and they go, that's very good, I should stop that. Or, you know what, I actually think that this plan they're going on is completely idiotic and I should let him self-destruct. And I kind of beeline for a position, and once we got here, I was like, wait a minute, I don't have a plan. Why do I not have a plan? Because he's going to play one move, c6. And now that the c file is closed and his bishop is the glue of the position, he now is going to attack me with his pawns. And then he's going to put his rook behind his pawns, and he's going to have a strong attack. Now, obviously, at this point, I'm also getting a little nervous on the clock, naturally. So what I decide to do here is try to defend, double up on the c file, And as this comes in to take it, and then I come up with this idea on the fly. Run with my king. Anticipating that a move like f4 just loses the rook in one move. That is not how the game ended. So he plays king g6. But now it's becoming pretty clear that I'm not even going to be able to dominate the h-file. So he's fast enough with the counterplay, puts his king next to his queen and his pawns, and I play f4. And the idea of this move was that after this exchange, maybe I'm going to get some counterplay, right? But he's quick. He plays f4 himself. Now, this is a little bit of a problem, and I start realizing that my king is in some serious trouble. But then he traded queens with me, and I was like, really? Really? He thinks he's going to win it so simply. And I'm like, well, to be honest, I think he might, because between the infiltration of the rook, either to attack my weakness or my king, now he's not going to hang this rook in one move, but when he moves it there, it's going to be a serious problem. So I decided, all right, I got low time, and if I complicate the position to some sort of endgame, I can get him low time as well, and I sack my rook. And the point is that now I'm going to scoop up all the pawns, literally all of them, and I'm going to try to draw this game. I'm going to try to get a bishop and a pawn for a rook and maybe a pawn. We're going to have an endgame, and maybe I will lose, but okay, at least I'm going to create a little bit of chaos. So he goes here, I go here. Now, if this pawn didn't exist, this is borderline a draw unless I get checkmated. Now, apparently, he can hunt down my king here. The engine is showing basically a forced checkmate with rook e8, but I only saw rook h2, and keep in mind we both have low time, so he goes for my pawn. And at this point, after bishop to c5, I am all but ready to surrender, because he wins this game very easily by taking this rook and going for my b pawn. If he goes for my b pawn, that I thought this is a win. But it turns out, I don't think it is. He actually here decides to go for my other pawn. And apparently, this is an equal endgame. I think the engine here, if you plug it into table base, says that I think this is a holdable endgame, because it's really difficult for his king to abandon his pawn, which is fascinating. That never even occurred to me that could be a thing. That this is just a fortress because we have the exact same pawn. What I was thinking is I need to go create a pass pawn. I need to push this pawn to b6 because that's the only way I'm going to create counterplay. And I'm pretty sure I had some drawing chances here as well, because I have all these ideas where he can't take my bishop because I'm going to take his rook, or he can't go win my bishop because I'm going to promote, and how's he going to stop my pawn if his rook gets in among my pieces, right? So I had all these tricks, and I was very excited, but obviously I had like 2 seconds on the clock, and I had to just basically move instantly. And what he did here, he did something very clever. He attacked my bishop from another direction. And the best move here, believe it or not, just king c3. And he can't take my bishop because of b7. And I didn't see that. I mean, I had too low time, and as close as I got to drawing, sadly, once he scoops up my final pawn here, I resign, because this is just game over. I mean, he's going to get my bishop out of the way, and then he will win. But a tough game, and I studied it, and I kind of learned a little bit about, the best plan in that position in the middle game after the move knight e4, but a fun one for sure. A couple rounds later, I think maybe I had 3 out of 4, or something along those lines. I got paired against Alexur 1981, Russian Grandmaster 2830 on chess.com. I think his name is Alexander Pridorozhni, or Alexei Pridorozhni. And he played e4, and I was like, all right, c6, NBD. And he played this variation of the Caro-Kann, which doesn't have a name, I don't think. I mean, chess.com doesn't even give it a name, but it's a very tricky line, because there's literally a trap here. The trap is to take and play queen b5 check and just straight up win a pawn, which is kind of an embarrassing trap. But I took. And basically I took because I usually take here and play knight f6 against like the 2 knights. So I decided to do it here as well. He damaged my structure and played b3, because if he played knight f3, now we're back into 2 knights. After b3, I played a move which, it's not the best move, but it's an interesting move. I played queen d4. Now, naturally, he's not going to give me his rook. But I really like when opponents need to commit structurally like this. And then I backed up. So that when he puts his bishop here, it's not open, and he can't move back. The only thing he can do is move up. And then the d4 square could get weak. That was actually my whole idea. And I was like, all right, well, we did it. I thought I was pretty big brain. So I played knight a6. And they say, why are you playing knight a6? Well, the truth is, where are you going to move your pieces? Because you can't play c5, knight c6. That's simply too slow. I mean, maybe you can, but I was like, why on earth would I do that? It seems a little bit ridiculous. So knight a6. And I'm going to play e6 after I develop my bishop, and then I'm going to maybe castle long, maybe rook g8. So he plays c4, right? And so I'm like, okay, I have a couple of choices, but I need to defend this pawn against this pin. So I play queen f5, and he goes here. Now, at this point, I'm a little bit unhappy because I see that like knight d4 is maybe possible, and various ideas with jumping into the middle. He can get some quick development. I might be blocking my bishop, so I decide to play e5, to just take a little bit of central space and really make him question whether or not d4 is going to happen. It's not, because actually I have this very nice check, and because I made him commit his pawns early, nobody can block the check. And you really don't want to play king d1, because that's just a stupid-looking move. But he played a3, and obviously the point of a3 is what? To not allow anything to go to b4, and maybe play d4. Now, in this position, I kind of knew that his idea was going to be to play this move, so I just developed my knight first, which is to attack this pawn, and then he defended it, and then I played bishop e6. What bishop e6 does is disconnects the queen from my king. I also add a little bit of pressure over here, but most importantly, moves like knight d4 are just not possible anymore because my king is actually not in any sort of pin. And the other reason that d4 doesn't work now is because we go full danger levels, and we go here. And that's an issue. That's actually a very big problem. If you take my knight, I take this, and my queen starts beating everybody up like they owe her money. So, rook c1. And now, ladies and gentlemen, black to move. And play a move that doesn't look like it should make much sense. But that move is long castle. Looks like the king is a little airy here. But now I add another attacker to the game. I've now developed multiple pieces in a row. And my opponent has a very big weakness on that square, which I very happily made him move a long time ago. So long castle. Now he plays d4. And the engine here just really likes taking. It just likes to just take. I didn't really understand why I would allow this tempo move. Yeah, but the engine's very calmly like, yeah, just back up, and then, you know, bishop out and rook out. And, you know, I'm more like a e4 and shove my knight down his throat kind of guy. And I thought that was better. He played knight h4, and then I realized that here I have a very nice move. So my knight is hanging and my queen's hanging, so naturally I must move my queen somewhere that attacks the knight. Now, there is a major difference between queen g4 attacking his knight and this move attacking his knight. And do you know what that difference is, folks? Very good. The difference is that from these two squares, the queens control something different. On the h5 square, the queen also controls h6. And I'm thinking active development, and I see queen and rook on the same diagonal, and that's what I want. And when he took my knight, he was probably expecting this, develop, and castle. But no, we leave the knight and we go for the goodies. We go for the queen and the rook. But it gets worse, because here he probably expected to trade queens, because if I take his knight, you know, my bishop is strong, but maybe he gets out in time. And no, it gets a lot worse than that, because here we have the absolutely savage bishop to d2. That's a nasty move. That's a gross move. That's a gross move. Now, if you play king d1, I might even back up for a second to check you again and then, you know, go about my business. But he sacked his queen. And I gave him a check before I scooped up this knight. I just gave him a check. And now the question is, how do you convert this position? Because he wants a situation where he finishes his development, hides his king, consolidates with his bishop somehow, like by putting his bishop on that square, and doesn't lose anything. Well, the way you convert is you need to attack what's weak. Sometimes that's a piece, and sometimes that's a square, and you go queen g5. Queen g5. The point of queen g5 is that we attack d2. That's mate. So, rook c2. But now we have one more thing that will take this position over the top. e3. e3 is a problem, because it attacks f2, and after pawn takes, obviously queen comes in. You just can't have this. Queen beats up everybody. But if you play bishop g2, white cannot castle because white already moved the king. So black to move. And I saw a nice idea here. The other thing that the move e3 did, besides target all this good stuff in here, was open up this diagonal when the pawn moved up. And so we end the game with the nice move, queen f5. And here my opponent resigned. And the idea is that after queen takes, well, I mean, sorry, not after queen takes rook, but I'm saying that's the threat. If you don't allow me to take your rook, that's very nice. I go even further, and you get mated. A 23-move win with the Carl Khan with the black pieces. I was very happy with this game. Very happy with this game. Which takes me to my next round, actually. Very next round, I was paired against another Russian GM. They keep sending the final boss of the Russian GMs for me. Klementy is a very strong Russian Grandmaster. And this was a really interesting game. So he played the Grunfeld, which I actually called the second we got paired. I played d4, and I was like, I think he's going to play the Grunfeld. Because Russians play real stuff. They play the Grunfeld. I mean, they got Peter Svidler, the Don Corleone, you know, the godfather of the Grunfeld defense. And I played a line that I've been studying. I like it. It's really interesting for blitz. It's CD5, knight d5. We go for the main line, and then in this position, there's a lot of moves. Even after bishop g7, you can play bishop c4 and knight e2, which is a main line. But I like this line, h3. And the idea is you're kind of a scumbag here. You just don't let the bishop come to g4. That's really a whole major point of this opening, is that the bishop can come to g4 and create counterplay against your knight, which creates counterplay against your center, right? Because you get rid of the knight. So h3. So he played castles. I developed. And then I developed to solidify my center. Now here there's two approaches. The queen kind of wobbles around over here with pressure, or f5, a very quick f5. And I should have known that Mr. Klementy would play takes, takes, and f5. He played the main line. He played a line that actually, I have gotten this position, like this position, probably 40 times in blitz games on my various anonymous accounts. Maybe 40 is a bit of an overstatement, but no one really plays for f5. Like 3 people have played f5 against me, but it's the main line. And my main line, I mean, has been played a lot by GMs. And actually here, white castles and sacks the pawn and gives this check, and then plays this move. And the point is that you go for f7. You've given up a pawn, but you go for f7, and it's really hard to protect. For example, if black plays the move queen to e8, after rook b1, you can't move the bishop very easily because the pawn. And if you play a move like b6 trying to move the bishop, bishop b5 pins you, d5. I mean, this knight is just going to take this pawn at some point. So he played knight d4, and it's actually funny. According to the database, knight f7 is the only move that's ever been played here. Now, I have had people play f4 against me in this position. I've also had people take and play e6. But I've never had someone do this. I've never seen this before, but it's been played 5 or 6 times, including in a game, Grisha Kasparov in a blitz game. And I didn't like the fact that if I go here, my bishop is trapped. I didn't like this. I thought that was bad. Turns out, there's no way to win this bishop. It looks scary, but there's no way, because, for example, if you play queen e7, I take the knight. Stupid. So that doesn't work. And actually, it's not so terrible. But I decided to take on e4, and I'm actually just a pawn down. I misplayed. He knew the opening better than me, so what did I do? I tried to be active. I tried to swarm him with my knight and my bishop and kind of get a little bit out in front of his like light-scored bishop moving. And then here he uncorked some savagery on me. He let me go knight f7. I was like, what is he doing? And then he hit me with this. I actually thought that I blundered and it was decisive. I was like, oh, this game is over because I really messed up. Bishop h3 is a crazy move. I can't take, obviously, because knight f3 and all this jazz is simply too strong. Turns out that it's actually fine. Because king h1, knight takes g5, I have this. See, if I don't have that move, if I play like king g1, well, then he just gets both my bishops. We both actually overlook this idea. Apparently, I can take. I mean, he can still pressure me with rook f8. It's completely insane attack. So, no, we're going to play it safe. We're going to block the queen's diagonal. And so obviously, you know, he went for my bishop. And I said, no, you actually can't have my bishop. And he retreated. I retreated to kind of target his knight, and he went here. And then here I was like, all right, I'm in desperate need of coming up with a plan. He has a knight and 2 pawns for a rook. So material is completely equal. But what is my plan? Because he's going to go here. He's going to continue creating an attack. And then it hit me. I was like, wait a minute. What if I just consolidate? Just bring my queen and my rook together on the d file. And then I came up with a nice idea. I'm very happy with this idea. I was like, what is black's best piece? Like, yes, this. Yes, I'll take that when I can. Maybe. But it's this bishop. I mean, this bishop is like about to just crack open my king's face. So what do? We gotta trade the bishop. Bishop back to c2 and bishop to e4. And that's what I did. Admittedly, apparently I could have taken this pawn. I completely missed that during the game. Please disregard. Bishop e4. I was so set on bishop e4. So he goes queen e8. And now I'm like, wait a minute. I'm going to trade both his bishops. Because if I remove the power of his position, he's just worse in every endgame. I have a queen and 2 rooks versus queen, knight, rook. I'm better, right? And I trade his bishop. And then a couple moves later, I trade this bishop. And I go queen b2. I'm like, wait a minute. I think I'm in the driver's seat. I think we're no longer playing to survive this game. We're now playing to win this game. f4. Goes queen c5. I play king h1. I'm like, oh, I'm cashing in. I want to take on e5. And he blundered. Completely blundered. Rook takes e5. Now, he can get my rook and then my other rook, but I thought that with all this attack, I was just simply winning. So I took an e5, and then I got nervous. And if you watch the stream, you'll actually exactly see it right here. He played queen c4, and my original idea here was to play this move. And I thought this was just easily winning. Point being that the knight can't really move, because then we go for the king. But then rook f4 is a problem. And then I was like, wait, but I can take with check. But then I saw he comes here. In my head, I didn't play this. It's like, wait a minute. Where's my attack? And I don't have an attack. So I started getting nervous. I was like, oh my god, this is like really, So I played rook c1, attacking his queen. Now in this position is +6. It's a completely winning position. Rook e1. And if rook takes f4 is played, then I have this. I get to a situation where even though he can check me, the knight can't escape. But I had maybe 20 seconds. And I played rook c1. And then I was like, oh my god. Rook d5. And I thought I was winning. And then he hit me with this move. This move completely blindsided me. Completely abandoning his knight and attacking my rook. I'm like, oh my god. Now the knight jumped back. We both have about 10 seconds here. I beeline for a trade of rooks, but I'm scared because the knight and the queen from long range is tricky. And I'm just trying to shuffle around and make some moves and not lose on time. And so is he. And then disaster strikes and I blunder knight e3. And I'm like, oh no, I'm down a pawn. I mean, oh my god, what am I doing? And then now he blunders a pawn. And the rest of this game is a lot of very anxious shuffling. He actually won my a pawn like this, but it's still a draw. Because his king just cannot escape a net of checks. And it took 79 moves and a big throw from your boy Gotham. But we got the job done. And we drew the game. But I got so nervous. It was so frustrating. I completely lost my mind right here. Like it just hit me that I was just completely winning for a second game in a row. Total meltdown. But we'll go to the next game. In this game, I'm playing against Harsha Bharathakoti. I hope I pronounced that correctly. It's a lot of syllables in there. I don't know if I've played this individual before, but this one was another Queen's Gambit declined. And this time, instead of knight d7, this is a6. This is the kind of Magnus QGD. The point being that black wants to take and play b5. And I played very solid. So I played all the normal looking moves. I played e3, developed my bishop, and then castles, and brought my rook. And the idea is you wait for h6. So you develop all your pieces, you wait for h6, and then, believe it or not, you play this. And the point is that you actually want black to take you. This is very good for white, because this bishop has no squares. So if bishop g4 comes, you can just like give a check or play even queen e1. Look at this, unpinning, and then play knight e5, and now white is just doing very, very well. So bishop f4 is an interesting idea. You damage your structure, but it's also a common idea in the Londons, various London variations. Opponent didn't bite, played queen c7, we traded, and now I decided to go attack the dark squares of the queen side, because really this whole game is going to be decided by certain like square complexes. Like this complex of squares, whether I can get in over there, whether black can get good control over e4, similar to the Blubaum game, right? So I kind of went forward on the queen side. Now, objectively, the position is completely equal, but in the long run, you know, if I can plant some good stuff over here, I have another idea. It's called the minority attack. A, B, and D versus a full A, B, C, D like this. With this structure, open C file, I'm going to go B4, A4, B5. So I'm going to attack the planted structure of the pawns and use my open lines. It's a very common idea. Opponent goes bishop G4. Naturally, I do not allow my pawn structure to be compromised. And then I'm just kind of hanging out. I'm seeing what's going to happen. And then here I play queen C7. I thought this was a move that was actually changing the tide of the game. course of the game. And the reason is because this is sort of annoying. It's a thorn. I mean, it attacks everything, right? And opponent played bishop f5. Now, I don't really have much of a choice. I kind of have to trade. And I played knight f3. My idea, double my rooks, b4, a4, b5. That's the game plan. Go instigate on the queen side. And here, opponent played f6. I played b4, knight f8, knight e6 to kind of maybe kick my queen out. I'm like, nope, we're not going anywhere, and b5's on the cards. And then a couple moves later, oh, not even a couple moves later, immediately, disaster strikes. The opponent makes a blunder. Heart starts pounding. Oh my god, what did they blunder? The rook. Anytime you have a rook like this, and it's got no backup, rook takes c6. Uh-oh. And now that's when that heart rate starts going, oh, I'm completely winning again. All right, let's calm down. Let's win this game. Let's be simple, calculated, concrete. All right, get the rook out of there. Continue forward with b5. Now, which way do I take? I decided to take with the queen. Why? I want the a versus the b. I don't want the symmetry because then I have no way through. So I decided to take with the queen with pressure on this and pressure on this. And then here, oh, incoming counterplay. See what the opponent is doing, shoving all the pawns in my face. No counterplay for you. Queen b1. Get those queens off the board now. Now. Queen b1, knight g7, we trade, and now I go to c5. Now immediately targeting that loner pawn on d5 is my pawn to get, and I got to bring my rook. Now, at this point, well, I don't want to hang my a pawn, so I go a5. At this point, I'm thinking, should I play g3? Should I play h3 or should I play h4? One of these moves to make sure I have no back rank problems, and obviously this is going to happen, and then I can rotate my knight maybe to d3, maybe to f4, we chillin'. But I'm like, you know what? No, I like this glue of rooks first. And then I don't need the back rank. I'm going to reroute my knight, and then I'm just going to walk my king. Why am I even... Those pawns are nothing. I mean, why am I baiting them? No. There's no play here at all. So what do? I route my knight, obviously. Now, I'm going to move my rook, knight c5, knight b7. Heart rate escalating, you know? Opponent also playing very fast. Maybe I got 20 seconds on the clock. I'm like, all right, we got this in the bag. Now, you can sack the rook and win the knight, but that's completely idiotic. Why would you do that? But the defense is just about to collapse, so I play rook c3. Rook c3 is a very tricky move because rook takes a5 loses to either check here, or take, knight c5. So you can lose in two different ways. And I have the threat now of knight c5 and rook here, and maybe even rook here and some a6 breakthroughs. Like, it's bad news. I'm like, oh, that's it. This game is over. This game is just over. Knight c5. Opponent goes for a long think, and I'm like, that's it, baby. That's it. Knight c5. I mean, if you play rook c7, you just walk directly. I mean, it's over. King f7, okay. Rook e7, I think for a sec. If I play rook b7 in this position, then obviously a5 hangs. So I'm like, well, I just won't let them take a5. I'll take b7. And I got caught. I got absolutely caught and dropped on my face in this position. 2 pawns down for half a move. My opponent comes at me with knight takes d4. And suddenly, I realize I'm in trouble because they played fast in the complications and I was a little bit more hesitant. And now the tide changes completely. I cannot take this knight because of back rank mate. I have to get my rook out of the way, and knight e2 is a fork. I have one option. It's to play rook to b2 or to check, get my knight out of there so it's not in the sight of the rook, and then play rook to b2. I decide to go with the second one. However, when that happens, a5 now falls. I've gone from 2 pawns up to 0 pawns up. And the tide has completely shifted. There's constant threats, back rank problems, and I went full deer in the headlights. Now the position is 0-0-0. It's actually a completely equal position. You give me this position even against Magnus Carlsen, I might not lose in spectacular fashion. I maybe might hold a draw. Not in this case, though. Also kind of a bold thing to say against Magnus. All right, give me like some 25-50 GM. No, Magnus can beat me. Because you already know the YouTube comment's going to be like, oh yeah, really? You're so arrogant. I don't know why you sound like Peppa Pig, but that's what I imagine hate comments sound like. Anyway, rook c1 because we can't hang back rank. Now I got to get my knight out of there. So what do? First I play rook d2 to apply some pressure and maybe double up. And then I realize, uh-oh. And I had to get my knight out. And I can get it out through the back. Try to go to b6. Or through the front, attack the rook and rescue. But all of a sudden comes this move. And that's when I realized that I had messed up big time, because I'm now going to get butchered. And there's nothing I can do, actually, because I'm about to get doubled up. And so in this position, I resigned the game. How quickly it all changes. On move 39 of this game, the evaluation is plus 3.5. But because my opponent found a very nice defensive resource and I wasn't able to deal with the back rank problems, and I didn't play that back rank move in the scramble earlier, I end up not just blundering a draw, I end up blundering the whole game. So we finish with 1.5 out of 4 against the GMs we played in this title Tuesday. We were winning in 3 of the games. We were. I was never winning against Blubaum. Never. That was not good. Maybe could have held it, but unfortunately I could not. A lot to take away, though. A lot to learn. Played a lot of interesting positions. I never got to play against such good players in relatively serious events and a relatively serious time format. So overall, I'm pretty happy. I would say I'm pretty happy. And I appreciate all of you for making it this far in the video. And if you'd like content like this that I can, take out of a Title Tuesday run, let me know. I'll keep making content like it. Peace out. Get out of here.